I, a 26-year-old woman, have always had a strained relationship with my parents, primarily due to my younger sister Ava, who is now 19. Despite my efforts to unveil her manipulative nature over the years, my parents never saw it, until a recent incident. Ava was born a few years after my mother suffered a heartbreaking miscarriage. Considered a miracle child, Ava brought immense joy and healing to our family. Consequently, my parents doted on her excessively, often making her the focal point of our family. As children, I genuinely cared for Ava, but as we grew, I began to notice her manipulative tendencies. She was adept at twisting narratives to her advantage and excelled at portraying herself as the victim. This talent of hers left me and the rest of our family often blindsided by her actions. On one of my birthdays, our grandparents gifted me an antique pocket watch, a cherished family heirloom. Ava, envious, wanted to share it, but I refused since it was my special gift. Unable to persuade our parents as it was a grandparent's gift, she resorted to placing a spider in my pillowcase, knowing my fear of spiders. That night, I awoke to a spider crawling on me and screamed in terror. While our parents rushed to my aid, Ava feigned shock and concern, only to later confess her actions to me with a disturbing smile. Another painful memory involves inviting a classmate, Paul, over to watch a movie. Excited and dressed to impress, my anticipation turned to humiliation when Ava deliberately spilled juice on my dress and mocked me in front of Paul. She spent the evening sharing embarrassing stories from my childhood, ensuring Paul and I had no privacy. When he left, Ava smugly remarked that he could do much better than me. Despite repeatedly sharing these experiences with my parents, they dismissed them as youthful naivety, always viewing Ava as the innocent one. This pattern caused me to retreat and stop voicing my concerns, feeling increasingly like an outsider within my own family. I focused on my studies and eventually moved out for college, which provided a much-needed break from the tense home environment. However, Ava's disdain was palpable during my visits home. She would ignore me at family meals, interrupt conversations with our parents, and often tamper with my belongings under the guise of borrowing them. Recently, my parents took Ava on a vacation, excluding me, which seemed like just another instance of favoritism. However, during this trip, Ava's actions escalated to the point where she got arrested, finally exposing her true character to our parents. This incident has been a turning point, as my parents are now beginning to see the Ava I've known all along. This shift in their perception is bittersweet, as it comes after years of feeling overlooked and misunderstood in my own family. During my college years, I preferred spending breaks with the families of my college friends rather than going home. My parents understood and saw this as a sign of my independence and desire for some space. When my sister Ava finished high school, her grades weren't strong enough for university, so she opted for community college and stayed at our parents' home. Now I work for a business analyst in San Francisco, and I love my job. My contact with my parents is sporadic, and I rarely visit them. I've completely lost touch with Ava. Recently, my father suffered a serious heart attack but miraculously survived. After being rushed to the hospital and receiving treatment, he was advised to exercise regularly. Following his recovery, he expressed a desire to spend more time with the family. My job allows me to work remotely, so I stayed a few extra days at home. However, Ava seemed upset by my presence, so I kept my distance to avoid conflict. One morning, my father proposed a family vacation, something we hadn't done in years. Although I had reservations, I agreed for my father's sake. Ava, unenthusiastic, reluctantly accepted. My father handled all the travel bookings. I planned my leave from work and asked my colleagues not to contact me during the vacation, as I wanted to focus on family time. Upon arriving at the airport, I discovered my flight ticket had been canceled. My father was confused, insisting he had booked and paid for it. Upon investigating, we found that only my ticket had been canceled. Ava, smirking at me, seemed pleased. Recognizing her familiar manipulative expression, I confronted her, but my parents dismissed my accusations, attributing it to an airline error or a simple mistake. Frustrated by their inability to see through Ava's actions, I felt sidelined, With no available flights that day and the prospect of traveling alone the next day unappealing, I was stuck. Despite the chance to fly out later, the idea of sharing a room with Ava, who clearly hadn't changed, was daunting. This family trip was turning out to be more stressful than anticipated, making me question whether it was worth pursuing at all. Wondering what other tricks my sister Ava might pull to ruin my trip, I felt disheartened. My father, initially reluctant, suggested perhaps returning home to plan a different vacation. However, he soon reflected on how long it had been since he'd taken a break, and my mother chimed in, remarking on my frequent work-related travels and implying that missing one trip wouldn't be a big deal for me. Their words stung. It seemed they were subtly encouraging me to let them go without me. Reluctantly, I told them to proceed with their vacation if they wished, and they quickly accepted. Though I was saddened that they seemed indifferent to whether I joined or not, I didn't want their investment in the trip to go to waste. I watched as they excitedly headed off, leaving me alone at the airport. I decided to return to my place in San Francisco, preferring the solitude of my own space over the empty feeling of our family home. Back home, I tried to move past the airport debacle. I reconnected with old friends and lost myself in books, making the most of my time off. During the vacation, my parents occasionally video called me, seemingly unaffected by my absence, which highlighted the existing favoritism in our family. I hoped they would one day see Ava's true colors. This hope seemed to materialize sooner than expected when, a few days into their trip, I received multiple missed calls from my mother. Alarmed, I thought something had happened to my father's health. When I called back, my mother, clearly distressed, revealed a shocking discovery. My father's crucial heart medications had been vanishing daily. They feared they wouldn't find the same medications abroad. In a desperate search, my mother found the missing pills hidden in Ava's room while borrowing sunscreen. This chilling discovery confirmed Ava's alarming actions. My father, upon seeing his medications in Ava's possession, realized the grave risk posed by our sister. My mother, shaken, asked if they should confront Ava immediately. I advised them to wait until they returned home to address it calmly and with evidence, knowing Ava's ability to manipulate situations. However, things escalated quickly. That evening, my father called to inform me Ava was in jail following a volatile confrontation. She'd become enraged when questioned about the medications, lashing out violently and accusing our father of favoring me by including me in their plans. Her outburst escalated until the hotel staff had to call the police. When they arrived, Ava's defiance only worsened, leading to her arrest. She would be released soon. But the incident had irreversibly changed my family's dynamics. My parents were now painfully aware of Ava's manipulative and harmful behavior. As difficult as the situation was, it seemed necessary for confronting the long-ignored issues within our family. In a turn of events that felt more like a thriller than real life, my parents found themselves stranded abroad following Ava's release from jail. To their dismay, they discovered their passports and wallets were missing, presumably hidden or discarded by Ava. This crisis marked the first time my parents truly saw Ava's destructive behavior for what it was. My mother, who had always shielded Ava, was now in a state of shock. Her illusions shattered. She called me, distraught, pleading for help as they were stuck without money or identification. I reassured them, promising to send money via Western Union, but stressed the urgency of locating their passports to facilitate their return home. I was confident Ava hadn't thrown them away. For the first time, my parents acknowledged that I had been right about Ava all along. They expressed their gratitude for my willingness to help despite their earlier decision to exclude me from the vacation. They apologized for their previous behavior and for not recognizing the favoritism that had hurt me over the years. While part of me yearned to forgive them, the deep-seated feelings of neglect were hard to overcome, increasing my anxiety for their situation. After Ava was released, they had no choice but to confront her for the passports. Threatened with the possibility of another police call, Ava finally disclosed the hiding place of their passports. Upon their return home, my parents had a definitive confrontation with Ava. It was clear they had reached their limit. They demanded she pack her belongings and leave, unable to tolerate her manipulative and harmful actions any longer, especially after the risk she posed to my father's health by hiding his medication. During the heated argument, Ava lashed out with bitter accusations. She expressed her resentment towards sharing her parents' affection and insisted they should disown me, claiming she should be their sole focus. Her words revealed the depth of her possessiveness and desperation, but this time my parents saw through her manipulation. This confrontation marked a significant turning point as they finally recognized the need to address the toxicity that had long affected our family dynamic. At that moment, it became painfully clear to my parents just how deep Ava's jealousy ran and the extent of her resentment towards my role in our family. In her frustration, Ava erupted in a torrent of accusations, threatening to tarnish their reputation. She claimed she would tell everyone that our parents, who are respected export manager, had neglected her during her childhood. Further, she threatened to falsely accuse them of parental negligence to the police if they insisted on her moving out. The possibility of these baseless claims jeopardized their standing in the community, leaving them trapped and anxious. In the days that followed, Ava's behavior grew increasingly erratic and destructive. When she learned that our parents were in regular contact with me, her fury intensified. She started breaking dishes in anger and even took to hiding their car keys, making it difficult for them to get to work. Just recently, my mother tearfully recounted another distressing episode. During dinner, when she was too exhausted to cook, Ava threw a massive tantrum. She smashed furniture around the house and then retreated to her room, blaring music so loud that our parents couldn't sleep. This escalating pattern of behavior deeply worried me. While I'd always hoped my parents would see Ava's true nature, I now feared she posed a real danger to their safety. I felt powerless to return home, as my presence might provoke her further, potentially leading to more volatile confrontations. Amidst this turmoil, Ava was arrested following an especially severe incident where she threatened our parents with a knife during an argument. This was the breaking point that compelled them to finally act. The police responded promptly, and Ava was taken into custody, charged with assault. With Ava in custody, my parents decided it was crucial to find a lasting resolution. They consulted a lawyer who advised them on the legal steps necessary to remove Ava from their home. They proceeded with filing a formal eviction notice, making it clear she could no longer stay with them. This legal action was a difficult but necessary step to protect themselves and restore some semblance of peace to our family life. It was a difficult decision, but for the sake of safety, it was essential. While our parents didn't wish to press further charges against Ava, they needed her to leave the family home. After bailing her out of jail, they served her with a formal eviction notice, meticulously prepared to ensure there were no legal loopholes Ava could exploit. This notice detailed the reasons for her eviction and specified the timeline for her departure. With legal representation, they initiated the eviction process in court. The thought of taking legal action against their own daughter was heartbreaking for them. They wrestled with feelings of guilt and sadness, but understood there was no other viable option. After a difficult period, the court issued an order mandating Ava's eviction. If she didn't comply voluntarily, they were legally empowered to remove her from the property. By next week, Ava would be required to leave, allowing our parents to finally look forward to reclaiming their peace and home. This ordeal has been incredibly challenging, but they remain hopeful for a quieter, more stable future post-eviction. Throughout this process, I've stayed in constant contact with them, offering support. To help them unwind from the stress, I've invited them to spend a few weeks with me in San Francisco. This visit would not only provide a much-needed change of scenery, but also allow us some quality time together, a chance to strengthen our bonds and support each other. In response to many comments on my previous posts, I appreciate the suggestions about considering a mental health evaluation for Ava. However, since she is an adult, it's complex. She must consent to any evaluation, and we don't want to escalate the situation by forcing the issue. Recently, My parents arrived in San Francisco, and we've had some heartfelt discussions. Sitting around the dinner table in my cozy apartment, they opened up about their mistakes. They expressed deep regret for not recognizing Ava's troubling behavior sooner. My father was particularly remorseful, acknowledging that he should have listened to my concerns earlier. Both of my parents were pained by the realization of how their favoritism towards Ava had hurt me over the years. They sincerely asked for my forgiveness. I let them know that while it was not easy to revisit those painful memories, I appreciated their acknowledgement and willingness to make amends. This openness is the first step towards healing our family wounds and moving forward together. Listening to my experiences, my parents were deeply shocked and saddened by the extent of the emotional distress I had endured alone. They openly acknowledged the pain I felt from feeling isolated within my own family. This conversation revealed how their favoritism towards Ava, whom they had never expected and always viewed as a miracle, had skewed their judgment. With genuine remorse, they asked for my forgiveness for the years of oversight. It was a bittersweet moment for me, having longed for their recognition, even if it hadn't come about in the way I had hoped. Nevertheless, this marked a turning point that introduced a new level of honesty and clarity to our family dynamics. For the first time in many years, we were truly confronting the issues that had plagued our family. I shared with them that rebuilding trust would take time, but we committed to working through these issues together. For the remaining days of their visit, I planned to cherish the time with my family, enjoying the vibrant streets of San Francisco, sharing meals, and simply enjoying each other's company. This time together was about more than just fun. It was a crucial period for mending the bonds that years of favoritism and denial had frayed. As we reconnected, it became clear that their decision to stay with me was about more than escaping the immediate stress caused by Ava. It was about a genuine desire to repair and renew the family dynamic that they feared was nearly lost. We needed this fresh start just as much as they did. During their visit, we discussed how to handle the situation with Ava, who was currently staying with a friend. Despite the chaos she had caused, as parents, they felt a profound responsibility towards her. We recognized that her troubling behavior might stem from deeper issues and considered the possibility of a mental health evaluation to better understand her condition. However, since Ava is an adult, we couldn't force this assessment and would look for ways to encourage her to seek help voluntarily. My parents planned to reach out to Ava once they returned home to gauge her openness to discussion. I chose to remain distant as she still harbored strong resentment towards me, and I didn't want to exacerbate the situation, especially considering her past aggressive behavior. I advised my parents to meet her in a public place to help ensure a controlled environment, where she would be more likely to manage her emotions. Our primary goal was for Ava to understand our perspective and to recognize the deep love and concern we still held for her. This wasn't about assigning blame, but about coming together as a family to address and heal from the issues that had strained our relationships. This approach was about fostering understanding and support, paving the way for a healthier family dynamic in the future.